Call a member for Lyne.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. These two bills, the Superannuation Guarantee Charge Amendment Bill 2025 and the Treasury Laws Amendment Payday Superannuation Bill 2025, introduced the government's payday super reforms announced way back on the 2nd of May 2023. Why has there been such a delay in bringing these effective and relatively simple changes to this place is something for this government to answer. Even so, in the electorate of Lyne, with the oldest age demographic in the country, with 30.1% of our population aged over 65, compared to the rest of New South Wales with just 17.5% over 65, superannuation policies are a very important matter. Our average age is 51, compared to 38 across the country. And with the employment base being principally in the services and small businesses sectors, the payment of superannuation entitlements is also a major hot point. Unpaid super remains a significant issue, with around 2.8 million Australians missing out on an estimated $5.1 billion in superannuation each year. Because payments are only made quarterly, unpaid super often goes unnoticed for months, by which time the employer may have become insolvent or the employee may have moved on. The Super Members Council has presented to me data that 28% of workers in the Lyne electorate were affected by not having their super entitlements paid in 2022-2023, and over 16,600 of these workers didn't get an average of $1,600, totalling $27 million across the electorate. And lower-income workers, young people and those people in insecure work are most likely to be caught out by unpaid super. The reforms will incentivise employers to pay their employees superannuation guarantee contributions at the same time as salary and wages, so that contributions will reach employee super funds within 7 business days of the employee's payday, starting from 1 July 2026. That's a good thing. We know that the government originally planned to introduce this legislation in late 2024, which would have allowed an 18-month transition period for employers, software providers and super funds to prepare. By delaying the introduction until October 2025, the Albanese government has effectively halved the implementation window. Now, that's definitely not a good thing. Businesses are being given just 8 months, and not 8 months from when the laws are passed, but from the day the bill was introduced. That's a reckless, unrealistic and irresponsible timeline. The rollout of this is rushed, poorly planned and risks chaos for small businesses right across the country, including in my own electorate of Lyne. This is a familiar story from this government. The big announcement is more important than the policy detail and actual outcomes. From Jim Chalmers' failed and overruled attempt to touch up superannuants with his ploy to tax unrealised gains, to this half-baked rollout of payday super. The Albanese government delayed this legislation for a full year and in doing so cut the transition time for business in half. What was the hold-up? The government is expecting small business to pick up the slack and wear the cost and the trouble when they're least able to do so, which goes to the heart of this iteration of the Australian Labor Party's problems. Not one member of Labor's cabinet has ever run a small business, and it sees superannuation as a pot of gold that can be touched up when the Treasurer's books aren't looking so good. Bob Hawke would be turning in his grave, and we know that what Paul Keating thinks. I note that numerous superannuation funds and their representative organisations have welcomed the introduction of these bills. On the other side of the ledger, the business side, I also note that numerous bodies support the concept of payday super in principle, but are concerned, like us, that the increased administrative burden, especially for small businesses who are not aware of the changes and whose payroll systems and software may not be ready for the changes. I appreciate that the ATO has released a draft compliance guideline outlining its intended approach for the first year of payday super next July, but the government and the ATO will need to be mindful and flexible to allow an orderly and manageable uptake of these changes for small businesses. But all this that assumes the community is sailing along quite nicely and can accommodate changes while getting on with the daily routine. Well, if it were only that simple. In line, we are now 6 months on from the worst floods in recorded history. Towns were swamped, bridges swept away, houses and farms, dairies and sheds, shops and businesses and workshops and offices and schools were inundated. The region, my hometown, my region, is still struggling through the consequences. People are still not back in their homes. Businesses have either closed up for good or weighed down by debt. There's been no Cat D for small business, and there's been no Cat D funding for community infrastructure. Now we have on top of this the New South Wales government shutting down the local timber industry, prioritising its promise to the Greens to create a so-called Great Koala National Park over hundreds of direct and maybe hundreds of more direct indirect jobs. And while the conservation estate has been increased for no good reason, our imports of timber products have nearly doubled in the last 20 years. We now import nearly 50% of sawn timber products. We are losing our sovereign right and capacity to be self-sufficient in timber production, and what comes with that is a loss of jobs. Some timber mills on the New South Wales mid-north coast will become unviable and will have no choice but to close. Communities will be gutted and they will be less safe because the equipment and the skilled workers to operate the heavy machinery in times of bushfire crisis will be a memory. These people won't have a job to generate some super from, and their employers won't have to worry about ATO compliance guys and updating their software and payroll systems because they won't be in business. There's the great shame and the woeful irony. On one hand, correcting a superannuation oversight to make it better and fairer, but on the other, looking away when people lose their jobs or business after a natural disaster or a payback for preferences deal. And talking about looking away, which is what is happening on the actual realities on the topic of energy and the cost of the government's reckless renewables rollout and their relentless pursuit of their symbolic net zero. I expect there will be some more forlorn looking away from the news from the owners of the Tomago aluminium smelter in Newcastle. The owners, Rio Tinto, have made clear that they are looking at closing down the aluminium smelter, putting over 1,000 direct and over 5,000 indirect hunter jobs at risk. Why? Because Rio Tinto has made clear its decision is 100% due to the cost of energy. Now, the Minister for Energy and Climate Change comes into this place, spins many wheels to deflect the fact that it is under his watch and under this government's energy policy, its reckless pursuit of weather-dependent energy for baseload power, that Tomago and Rio are making this decision. The government is simply not pursuing the cheapest forms of energy. This government isn't committed to ensuring that Australians and our industrial base are supported by reliable and affordable power, nuclear, Healy coal and gas. Australia's manufacturing share of the economy has fallen now to just 5% of GDP in the June quarter of 2025. ASIC insolvency statistics reveal that over 1,400 manufacturers nationally have collapsed since 2022-2023. Australia's deindustrialisation has seen us now ranked on the Index of Economic Complexity at a lowly 105th out of 145 nations, down from 70th in 1998. This is all due to this government's energy policy. Without affordable and reliable power, our manufacturing industry will continue to shrink, and so will the jobs. Deputy Speaker, Tomago's decision has enormous economy-wide implications for Australia. The Tomago plan is critical to the industrial and manufacturing industries that we have in this country, or should I say what we have left in this country. The Tomago plan is one of just 4 smelters in this country, located in Newcastle, for the port facilities and its proximity to energy from Hunter Valley Coal. It supplies an array of domestic and export markets with aluminium in all shapes and sizes. It is fundamentally part of a far bigger manufacturing sector that supplies our everyday goods. And a prime example is the James Strong Precision Packaging Facility in Taree. in the heart of the Line electorate, which I visited on many occasions. For over 30 years, James Strong has been producing and supplying food and aerosol cans in Australia. The James Strong plant in Taree employs over 80 people, Taree's second largest private sector employer, and produces 104 million cans per year, and has recently invested more than $8 million in an advanced production line to restore in-house capacity, to reduce reliance on imports and allow recycled aluminium to be incorporated into its process. Its energy prices have gone up 65% in just 4 years under this government, and because of this government. The consequences of shutting down Tomago for James Strong is significant, including undermining its global competitiveness and giving its foreign competitors a huge leg up in the Australian and overseas markets. How is this good for the regions and for Australia, and particularly for jobs? These price hikes, coupled with the threat of Tomago's closure, put at risk this investment in James Strong and Taree. It has never been clearer that Labor is the party for higher electricity prices and for killing manufacturing in this country. Deputy Speaker, in conclusion, may I say that these changes to superannuation are a good thing, but the bigger, far more important priority is to make sure we actually have employment in the first place, and we actually have an energy policy that enables industry to remain viable, remain open, remain operating and remain on our shores. It is crystal clear that net zero must go. We must have an Australian energy policy and an Australian emissions policy, not a European dictate. A policy that is about jobs, so that people can invest in themselves through superannuation. Thank you.